So hi Tim, it's a pleasure, and I'd love if you could introduce yourself to maybe that someone doesn't know really what's your work, what project have you been on, what are you working on right now?
Sure. My name is Tim Schafer. I'm the founder of Double Fine Productions, and we made Psychonauts and Brutal Legend, among other games. And the most recent thing we did was a remaster of Grim Fandango, which is a game I made in 1998 at LucasArts Entertainment. I used to work on graphic adventures there in the 90s, including Days of Tentacle, Full Throttle, and I was a writer and assistant designer on Música Island 1 and 2.
So let's talk about a little bit about Grim Fandango. I've replayed it. I mean, it's one of my favorite games of all time. So I'm replaying it again with the tank controls because I want to get the achievement of playing with the tank controls because you demand it. Talk to me a little bit about Grim Fandango. Is it your favorite game of all times?
Well, it was a really special game. You know, it really brought a lot of really talented people together. There's amazing artists who worked on it, amazing programmers, and fantastic musicians, and great actors, and just so many people were just at the top of their game, I think, and they all inspired each other to keep pushing themselves to really make something that no one had ever seen before. And I think that's one of the things I'm most proud of about the game is that no one had ever seen a game that looked like that before, and that even after all this time, I don't think there's that many games that are similar to that game. You know, we really wanted to do something original, and I think we succeeded. I hope we succeeded.
Yeah. How about game design choices? I mean, Grim Fandango was made like 18 years ago, so compared to now that you're working on, I think, Broken Age Act 2, what's the difference between game design-wise? I mean, what has changed? I mean, from Grim Fandango to Broken Age 2?
I mean, I think we still want to do the same thing where we create, you know, a really deep and meaningful fantasy world where people think of it as a real place and want to go to it all the time and meet characters that feel real to them and take an emotional journey along with those characters. And I think those are all the same. I think it's more about process. A lot of the process is different. And nowadays we do a lot more testing where we watch people play the game, and on Broken Age we're able to see where people get stuck. You know, we did that a little bit with Grim Fandango, but not fully. So there are a lot of hard puzzles in that game, and I think it's good. I think hardcore adventure game players still like the really, really hard puzzles. I think it's always challenging for people new to the genre to feel comfortable being stuck, because there are long periods where you scratch your head and you really don't know what to do, and you have to think and maybe take a break from the game. And I think that's kind of unheard of today, where people are expected to take a break from the game and go walk around the block or sleep on it before they figure out the solution to a puzzle. But that's the way games were back when we made Grim, and I still think it's a good way to play a game. Yeah,
that was about my next question. Do you think about video games these days I get the sense that their games are easier. I mean, you get a hint system, you get something, if you get stuck, you can unstuck it quite easily. But back in the days, it was like the only way for you to get the answer was either figuring it out, or either one of your friends, you didn't have Wikipedia or GameFAQs or any of those, basically the internet. Do you think games are easier these days?
I definitely think games are easier, except for you maybe have not played Dark Souls. But
oh yeah,
there's a revival by I think people who do feel that games are too easy these days. That people want to have games that are hard like they used to be, and but I think there's a lot of people who don't. Also, I think that's one of the reasons the games have grown so big and become such a large industry, is that there's people out there who really don't want the games to be that big. So I don't think one side's going to win in all this. I think there'll be a variety of difficulties for all different kinds of players as the games industry just keeps growing. I think there's going to be people who just want to casually spend their time being entertained, and I think there's people who want to be punished and want to have to really focus and do their best and feel their skill level rising as they play a game over and over again in order to get it right. I think there's both kinds of players, there always will be.
Great. Having said that, how do you see Grim Fandango standing the test of time? How do you see the reception of the new remastered version?
It's been great. It's been great to see people who've never played the game before play it and still feel like it's, it hasn't been, it's not like another game has come along and been just like it. And so I think it still feels really fresh to people, and also because it was a period piece, it was about kind of a film noir style, it really doesn't seem to me any more dated than it did back in the day. It doesn't feel dated. Obviously the graphics are something that we want to improve, and the sound quality and things like that. I think there's a couple references to screensaver passwords in the game, and other than that, it's not set in any particular time, so it's hard to really feel like you're playing a game that's tied to one era, And so, I think people, it's interesting because the internet is one of the reasons games are easier, or that the really hard, frustrating things in games have been removed, because you'll hear about it immediately. If there's a tricky part of your game, or there's a bug that's causing people difficulty, you'll be inundated on Twitter with angry people making you fix it. But that's also part of the support system. When you play a game like Minecraft, it wouldn't make sense to people unless you had the internet out there to help you, and YouTube videos and things like that. So it is a different landscape, but hopefully the important parts about the game, the feeling of being in a different world and working through that environment and that story, that characters, and having that resonate with people is exactly the same as it was 15 years ago.
One other thing that resonates is the puzzles. What is your train of thought? What are you usually thinking about when you get this idea for puzzles like in a game like in Fandango?
Well, we often think about, obviously an obstacle that you want to solve, and then we think about, what is a really obvious way to get past that obstacle, and then make sure that doesn't work. So, like, if you have you're trying to get high to a ledge, the first thing you think of is to look for a ladder, and so we always give you a ladder, but then we make sure all the rungs are broken, and so you can't use the ladder, and so you're thinking, hey, wait a second, that should have worked, that didn't work, and then you start thinking about putting your brain into a different space where you're thinking about, well, the obvious thing doesn't work. What's the least obvious thing? So people are forced to think laterally and really, come up and think outside the box in order to solve the problem. And I think the goal is to make it so each step along the way, they're trying to solve this problem. The game is anticipating everything they might try and kind of giving them a fun reminder that they're close, but they're like an Easter egg hunter or something where they're close, but they're not quite there, and gives them a little encouragement along the way. And there's, hundreds of puzzles in every adventure game, and I think some of them are obviously always going to be more successful than others at doing that. But that's always the goal, is to make people constantly entertained at whatever stage they are in the puzzle.
Great. And about how do you put them in the world? Do you think about the world and the scenario and put puzzles in them, or you think about the puzzle and then create a scenario for that specific puzzle?
The world always comes first to me, and because the world can give you, ideas for the game. Like, if you play Broken Age, there's a world where you're walking around the clouds, and you're in this world where birds can build nests in these clouds. So it makes you think about how the clouds behave and why you sometimes sink and why you sometimes float in the clouds. And that can give you ideas for mechanics, which then can give you ideas for puzzles and puzzle solutions. So the world, for me, comes first, and then thinking about the special properties of that world can lead to letting you think of what would be an interesting thing to do in that world, and how could that be a solution to a puzzle.
When do you decide that the puzzle is good enough for a game? You probably should have 1,000 papers of non-puzzle that didn't make to the game. How do you decide that this puzzle is going to be in the game and this one is not?
Well, sometimes you brainstorm with people and you talk about, it's really hard to do on your own. You often have to have a room full of people and kind of brainstorm ideas. And sometimes you get this aha moment where you're like, aha, we can do this crazy thing, and you know that the player will have that exact same feeling of aha when they play it. But then again, sometimes other puzzles are solved by, they're designed by you just filling in, making connections and solving a problem. Sometimes it's more just a matter of connecting dots, and we have to have the player figure out a way to use this wrench, but then also a reason why they wouldn't use it right away. Does this solve that problem? Yeah, it does. So sometimes it's a flash of inspiration, and sometimes it's just a laborious process of making connections.
And about how was the ratio of how many puzzles you get out of your head on paper, and compared to the puzzles that end up in the game?
Well, often, we're in a design phase for any of the old adventure games. We had one goal, which is we'd meet all afternoon, every day, 2 to 5, and we only had designed 2 puzzles. But we would talk all, for 3 hours and just come up with 2 puzzles. So, yeah, so that's kind of a low success rate as far as those ideas. But sometimes you're not really trying to solve a puzzle; you're just talking but that somehow leads to the inspiration that leads to the puzzle.
And last question about puzzles. I mean, what are you usually doing when you get an idea for puzzles? I mean, are you in the bathroom? Are you solving a Rubik's Cube? What's normally your technique to get ideas out?
Talking. I think talking to people, so brainstorming in a room with people is often where the best ideas come from, but sometimes I'll simulate talking by just getting my spiral-bound notebook out and writing in pen. You know, I like to write in the notebook and do this thing called free writing, where you have to write, and never stop for minutes or maybe an hour at a time. And that kind of does that same thing. There's something about putting your thoughts into words that I think leads to actual ideas that you might not have if you're just sitting there staring at the wall.